Draft Mechanic is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com. Draft Mechanic, Episode A1. On this episode of Draft Mechanic, we talk about our experiences at Gen Con 2018. We've got dozens upon dozens of games to get to, so that's pretty much it. This is a special episode, so hope you all enjoy. So sit back, relax, grab a pint, and enjoy the show.
You've seen the future, and it works to take a mile. The bit all is for the best in the best of our world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Danielle.
And I'm Shane.
Yeah, this is a very special episode of Draft Mechanic. This is not one of our normal episodes where we talk about games in a structured format because we are at Gen Con 2018. We are in Indianapolis. We are sitting in the hotel room. It is Wednesday, 4:34 p.m., and we are just going to kind of give you a few segments throughout this weekend of games that we talk about, games that we see. I guess not talk about until later, but games that we see, games that we play, so on and so forth. Somebody please save me. Danielle, say something.
So still games, lack of structured format.
Oh, yeah. So, hey, if this is your first episode of Draft Mechanic, it's going to be a little odd, but you can always get in touch with us on the internet at Draft Mechanic, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, draftmechanic.net, draftmechanic@gmail.com, all the typical things.
We've also got a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. There will probably be a thread up for this episode. Yeah, I guess there will be one. There's one for every other episode. So if we say something and you want to give us your 2 cents on what we've said, that is the place to do it.
Yeah, and if you want to hop in on our Draft Mechanic Slack channel, you can do that as well. We will be obviously in there a lot. This weekend, we have a channel in the Slack channel for Gen Con where we will talk about things we are doing and seeing and, you know, talking about when to meet up. So if you are at Gen Con, well, it's not going to matter because this is releasing after Gen Con, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, ignore those last few seconds. But hey, everybody, we have a third voice on the show today. Shane, say hi again.
Hello again.
You might remember Shane from prior Gen Con episodes. Shane is a friend of ours who also comes to these events, and we talk about all the games and stuff like that. And we are killing some time before heading down to the Sun King Beer Garden beer release kickoff party where they release Everlasting Gamer, the American Amber Ale, official beer of Gen Con.
Yes, and they will have a bunch of the other Sun King beer, and they're having some musical acts out there. Hey, you kind of cut off the end of our intro thing. If you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, we are in Indianapolis right now, but we are normally in Charlotte. Well, 2 of us are. Shane generally isn't. But on August 12th, we have our next meetup, which is going to be our great big board game day at Good Road Cider Works. So we would love for you to come out, play some amazing games. We've got some cool prizes. They're going to have a food truck. They've got ciders, meads, they've got some non-alcoholic beverages if you want to bring kids, because it's a very family-friendly place. So if you are in the Charlotte, North Carolina area and you are listening to this the week it comes out, we would love for you to come out and have a great time with us.
Oh, yeah.
Back to the Gen Con stuff.
Super looking forward to that. And hopefully, over the next few days, we will find a whole lot of games that we are bringing back to play at the Great Big Board Game Day. But that is a Sunday, so if you are in Charlotte or in the Carolinas in general, come on out. I'm hoping that we have a lot of fun.
Anyway, back to that Sun King thing.
Well, we are watching the clouds roll in right now, which is kind of terrifying because that means that this outdoor event might become very wet very soon.
You're not a witch. You won't melt.
That's very true. Obviously, not a whole lot has happened so far. We got in this morning. I've had a chance to play one game. I played a game called Pasaraya Supermarket Manager. This is coming from, is it Box Fox Games?
It was Box Fox Games.
Yeah. It's a deck builder that simulates basically running a supermarket. And this is interesting because it took a while for me to understand as we're playing this game that the deck builder function of it, when applied in this game, made a lot of thematic sense that I didn't realize until now was really unthematic about deck builders. So when you think about deck building games, generally you think about where you have your deck of 10 cards and some of them are money and some of them are other actions, but you spend those money cards and they come back into your deck and you spend them to get more cards. But what Pasaraya does that is like one of these, well, obviously kind of things, is that when you spend the money cards, they go back into the supply. So you're spending your money to bring in goods and people to then do better things with them to fulfill contracts. It's obviously a game about supermarket management, so you are buying, I think it's food and clothes and appliances.
Correct.
And then as they come back around through your deck, you're going to be putting them out in front of you to fulfill some order cards up at top. And there's also a set of different worker cards that each have 2 different worker actions that allow you to manipulate your cards and the goods and the other stuff in certain ways. It's interesting because it took me a few rounds to really understand the way that the cards were going to flow in this game, but once I got a feel for it, I'm like, oh, well, this makes like 100% perfect sense. When I spend the money, I don't have the money anymore, and I have to continue to sell goods to make more money. And I feel weird that this was weird, but I guess it's just a thing we never really think about in terms of deck builders, that your money should go somewhere, right? Yeah,
the other neat thing about the money in this game that I thought was kind of cool was when you complete a contract, the money goes into your bank, which is separate from your discard pile. Mm-hmm. And you, on your turn, can make a decision to move money from your bank into your discard pile, so you have currency with which to be able to buy goods or to hire people, but you choose how much you move, so how clogged up your deck is with currency is entirely your decision, which I think is different than your normal deck builder. Normally, when you get money, it goes into your deck, and that is something that you need to just deal with having in your deck. But in this case, the money is functional in the game. It's not just end-game points, but you are in control of how much of it is in your deck at any time. Mm-hmm. So this is a small release, a self-published release that I got a chance to play because Eric Yurko from What's Eric Playing had a copy of it, and it was met up in the hall and decided to play at a table in one of the food courts, and it's really nice, and I really want to play this game again. I feel like I might try to search this one out. But that is obviously the only thing we have for recent play so far. I guess it's Wednesday, so Gen Con hasn't started yet, really.
So let's see. We've got the Sun King thing this evening, and then obviously tomorrow is going to be the big rush. What is everybody going to be heading for first? Danielle, you're most interested in Warsaw,
I am, and it's from North Star, which is right by the door, so that's convenient.
Shane, is there anything on the list that you've seen that looks really interesting that you're excited to take a look at?
I really didn't do much research this year, so I'm just going to wing it.
It's kind of crazy to go in and see almost 650, and I guarantee I'm going to get 650 titles in this geek list before the doors open tomorrow. But it is crazy to see how many games there are coming into this year. You know, we talked about a lot of stuff on our hype list last week, and more than anything, I'm just excited to get in there.
Well, good. That'll happen tomorrow.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this crazy, wacky, weird episode. I guess we're going to break now and then go do some Gen Con stuff. And, well, for you, it'll be like 30 seconds until we're back again. But we'll be back in a little bit.
What are you going to do for 30 seconds?
I mean, what are they going to... I'm going to put bump music on. We do bump music here.
Oh, okay.
Bump. Want a second opinion on some of the games we talked about on this episode? Check out some other great content creators at punchboardmedia.com. Hey, everybody. We are back once again. It is, believe it or not, only the end of Thursday. I feel like this is the story after every Thursday of Gen Con, that at the end of Thursday, it feels like I've been here for 17 days.
No, man, it just feels like we've been here for 2 days, and we have been here for 2 days.
Well, I think probably what it is also is the fact that I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning to get in the press line, like I do every year.
You did do that.
Yeah, so I got to hang out in line with Brandon from What Did You Play This Week, and I guess actually soon to be The Shuffle, and also Travis Hill from Low Player Count. We made it with Jeff from the Mile High Game Guys, and we all hung out in the line and talked about who was tall and who was not tall. That was... Look, it was 6 a.m. Look, this is what we had.
In that group of people, aren't you all tall?
Brandon's not very tall. I'm much taller than Brandon.
Where did you stack up?
I was the tallest. Yeah, I'm slightly taller than Jeff.
Oh, no, it's Brian Surrey, who I thought today was very tall.
Brian Surrey, yeah, we've met a lot of tall people today, and a lot of people that weren't tall as well. Anyway, so this is your first day of Gen Con, kind of brief insanity. It's a little after midnight, so I guess it's technically Friday now, but I bet you listeners out there would love to hear about board games. Because,
as opposed to tall people?
Yes. So anyway, stops this morning. Where did I stop once I went in? I went by Renegade. I went by... I don't know. This is already starting to fade.
We went by Oink.
We went by Oink. Got some Oink games. I'm really excited. I have okay, so the game we'll talk about, I have a little game called Tomatomato? Something like that. But we have talked about this on the Hype List episode, and it looks like it is going to be equally as hilarious. It is literally saying... parts of the word tomato over and over again. That's the whole game.
I feel like that would be a game we should play now.
Maybe we will get to that a little bit after the recording. I also kind of just wandered around. It's weird. Like, I spent that first hour not sure of where I needed to go. I got in at 9 o'clock to do the press stuff, so I kind of just wandered around, talked to people, said hey to some people. I got to stop by the Gray Fox Games booth and say hi to Alex. Went over to North Star Games to say hi to Bruce and kind of just, give everybody a wave in those precious few minutes before the 10 o'clock as we call it, the running of the nerds, as I think what they're calling it now.
Don't run.
Do not run.
No,
So
it's just don't run this year.
the two of you were on the outside of the doors. How did that go for y'all?
We got there at about 9, thinking it was already going to be really packed, and there were just small clumps of people around the doors.
Yeah.
So we were able to, stand in a reasonable place, not right up someone's butt. And by the time it was 9:30, it was already a full lobby. I mean, it got as packed as it always gets. They have once again moved where the guy made the announcements from, so I have no idea where he was.
He was floating above
I
you.
could not tell.
What he was saying.
That also true. I do think it was kind of funny that they have a dice roll for their charity donation.
What?
So they roll a 6-sided die, and depending on the value it is, that's how much money they give to the charity. They do it every day, I guess, so theoretically it should average out, but I think they got a 2 or a 3 today, based on...
No.
That could be $24.
It could be. I thought at first they were going to say that it was depending on what number they got was the charity they donated it to of the official charities, but no.
No. So where did everybody go when you first got in today? Danielle, you went straight to North Star, right?
I did. I went to North Star because, as we established in the hype episode, I really wanted to see Warsaw, City of Ruins. Also, I wanted to see Bruce. But we did get to play a full game of Warsaw. It was very good. It felt a lot like Between Two Cities to me, except without having to rely on other people. You're the only one building your city, but you are drafting tiles that are being passed around, and the tiles have different zones on them, and you want to make sure that the zones are adjacent to or not adjacent to different other zones, very similar to Between Two Cities. So you're trying to make sure that you are maximizing each of the different types of zones scoring within this 12 square grid, either 3x4 or 4x3. The neat thing about it is when you purchase tiles, they all have a cost on them. But if you place them on top of a tile you've already placed, you can overbuild. And that allows you to only pay the difference between the tiles, and then you just cover up that lower tile. So if that lower tile is either causing you some negative points because you've built stuff around it that is not conducive to the scoring, or you just have something that's better, you can overbuild it and then not have to worry about paying a full cost. And in the later rounds, some of those costs can get pretty high. In the economy, I think the highest I saw was a 12 cost card. And to sort of give you some scale, if you take a tile and discard it for money, you get $3. So to make enough money that way to get 12, you'd have to discard an entire round of cards because you're only getting 4 tiles a round. So, being able to overbuild is really good. There's also a neat bus line mechanic where if you have buses around your city, they can't be on adjacent tiles, but if they're spread throughout your city, you get a bunch of points for having these buses because your city is well connected. I liked it a lot. I bought it right after playing it. I am very happy to have done so, and I think we're going to get a lot of play out of it.
Yeah, I'm glad that lived up to your expectations.
Woo!
It's really cool to see, the game that you're most interested in getting actually turned out to be a whole heck of a lot of fun. I was we got a demo play in there at the booth. We actually played a full game of it at the booth. It was the first thing we checked out this morning. The overbuilding mechanic is the kind of thing that makes 100% perfect sense in this specific game thematically. As you were rebuilding the city of Warsaw again and again and again, you're obviously going to be building on top of other things. But I felt like I had a hard time wrapping my mind around doing that for the first half of the game, because every time I had a tile that I wanted to build, I'm just like, but I don't want to cover that up because that's, connecting this park and it's making this thing happen. So you really have to set yourself up well with a diverse amount of stuff so that you can overbuild stuff without it being too impactful for your city.
Yeah, as you get to rounds, I think it's 3 and 4, or possibly 4 and 5, you're also going to have to remove tiles from your city. And it's not just the top tile, it's if you've overbuilt, it's the whole square. the whole stack of things, because the first time you're removing one tile, that is simulating World War I, where Warsaw took quite a bit of damage. And then the second of those rounds, you're actually removing 2 tiles simulating World War II, where Warsaw took quite a bit more damage. There is actually a tile in the game that you can get in one of the earlier rounds that allows you to ignore discarding one of the tiles in each of those instances. And the demoer who had got it was able to draft that, so he didn't have to remove 2 of those 3 tiles, which was really beneficial to him. But at the same time, it means that you're not clearing some of that space out. So if you have stuff that you want necessarily, like, you do create a little bit of space when you get rid of that, and maybe you can restructure things instead of overbuilding them.
Cool. Yeah, that is Warsaw, City of Ruins. I think it is available pretty much widely now. You can get that from North Star Games.
Yeah, I think it's still got the Grana label on it, but North Star is bringing it over.
Cool, yeah. Cool stuff. Oh, and they are getting Die Quacksalber de Quacklenberg,
Von Quedlinsberg.
your Kennerspiel winner this year. So they are very, very excited to have that coming in their catalog in late 2018 is what they're looking at on that one.
Yeah, I think he was saying late
November,
November,
December.
early December.
Shane, what did you head towards when we got in the doors?
I went right for Everdell.
Okay.
So, just at my wife's request, we picked that up. So,
We actually got to play that this
and
evening.
we played it, yeah.
That is from, what is it, Starling Games?
Yeah, it's Starling,
Starling,
which is...
Game Salute imprint.
Yeah.
So do you feel confident talking about Everdell a bit?
I mean, I was sort of there
Yeah.
for the game. I mean, worker placement, tableau building,
Yeah.
cute
You have
animals, beautiful berries.
Yeah, this is a well-produced game where you have this cardboard standee of a tree that is kind of the centerpiece of the board, and then you have the major board out underneath it where you have a whole bunch of different worker placement spaces where you can place your workers to get resources or discard or exchange cards for other resources. And there's also a central tableau of cards that some of the worker placement spaces allow you to get these cards into your hand, which is good because these cards you are going to then spend the resources to put the cards into your tableau. And they also obviously give you more ways to produce stuff or more ways to exchange resources or goods, or they interact in fun ways, with the goal of having a whole bunch of stuff in your tableau at the end so that you get a whole bunch of points, which is the coins and money.
Yeah, all of the cards are worth points in and of themselves, but they're also going to facilitate you to get other points. I think your friend who taught it to us said it was sort of like a combination of Seven Wonders and Lords of Waterdeep, the sort of resource manipulation of Lords of Waterdeep and the worker placement, and then the facilitation from the cards that Seven Wonders has, where if you build, somebody's house, the inn, let's say, you can on a later turn use one of these little round tokens to cover over the inn checkbox and play the innkeeper, who's the guy who lives in that house, for free. And a lot of these buildings have a critter, which is what they call them, that you can play for free if you've built the building, and that allows you to sort of move it around without having to spend all of your turns getting resources.
Yeah, I like the synergy of the cards there. I always like it when having the right card in my tableau allows me to get an extra benefit if that specific card comes up. So I do really enjoy that kind of the free build kind of action in a tableau builder. I felt weird in this. So the game takes place over five rounds?
Yeah.
And then between it's four or five. Anyway, between several of the seasons, you're going to be either generating some income or getting some cards from the tableau. But I felt weird in this in that the points you can score are on the cards, so you see that growing in front of you. But you also have the opportunity to get just straight points in the form of, I guess, like money or something. But it felt weird to me that I never got any of those money tokens until the very end.
Well, there were certainly very few of them. You don't get a big pile of VP chips like you would in a lot of games. There's only maybe 20 or so of the tokens. Some of them are threes, but you're not supposed to get all of your points in those. I think I picked up 2 different VP point things, but I think of it a lot like Race for the Galaxy, where you're not necessarily always generating those point chips, and that's not your main score demarcation. It's just another way if you're getting points off of a function of a card instead of the value of the card.
I forgot to get points. So,
It was decent, and I feel like I could play it again. I'm not rushing out of my way to get another play of Everdell in, but it was fun. I enjoyed the way the cards worked together. I think that's the thing I enjoyed the most. There were apparently also these goal cards and goal tokens that I should have paid any attention to.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about that.
But yeah, you also have the ability to send a worker out in kind of late game to claim these. I have 3 of this card, or I have this specific set of cards, kind of tokens and or cards that get you some points, which are apparently good.
They weren't worth that much more than each of the individual cards, though. Like,
yeah,
I think I picked up 2 of them, and they were worth 3 points each.
Mm-hmm.
There were some of the event cards that were worth quite a bit, but the one that was worth 9, which was the one that was the high point value, required you to have 10 cards out in your tableau when your maximum is 15.
Yeah.
And they had to be 2 of each of the 5 symbols. So you had to be sort of very well prepared to get that and have invested a bunch of stuff in it. I was able to get that at the end of the game, but it was the only thing that was worth more than, say, 5 points that I saw in the whole game.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're stumbling into those additional 9 points as well, rather than making it a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Lucky me, I had these specific cards.
And then you can dump cards at the end in the last round for coins. There's a catch-up mechanic there.
Yeah. Yeah, that is Everdell, and that is from Starling Games?
Yes.
Okay. Danielle, you also had another game of some very cute adorable
I had
creatures.
another cute woodland creatures game, which is called Spirits of the Forest. This was from Thundergriff Games, and if you heard us talk about Pot de Vin in an On Tap recently, I want to say 2 or 3 episodes ago, this is by the same company, and it's got a very similar, really nice pared down aesthetic with very excellent art that shines through. It is very similar in its little shelf look, and another small box game. Here you're going to have 4 rows of tiles, and the tiles are going to have 1 of 9 spirit symbols on them. And on your turn, you are going to take either 1 tile that has 2 spirit symbols on it, or 2 tiles of the same color that each only have 1 spirit symbol on them from the ends of the rows. And what you're trying to do, actually kind of similar to Pot de Vin, where you are trying to collect 2 different sets of symbols. First, you're trying to collect these spirit symbols, which are the main color of the tile, and whoever has the majority of symbols in each color is going to get that number of points for however many symbols they have. And if you have none of a certain color, you're going to lose points for not having any of that color. But there is also a secondary, I think it's called like an energy tile, or an energy symbol rather, which is a sun, a moon, and either a wind gust or a flame. I'm not really sure which. And they are on some of the tiles which only have 1 spirit symbol. So when you take those, you're going to also get these secondary set of symbols. And that will be scored at the end of the game in the same way, where whoever has the majority is going to get that number of points. And if you have none, then you're going to lose points. So you're trying to keep track of the spirit symbols, which is your main color, but you also have to keep track of these other energy tokens. And at the end of the game, you just add up the majorities and whoever got points from those things, and it works out pretty well.
Yeah, this is, you were setting it up as I was talking to Cassidy. They were playing through some game about birds.
Crows, I think.
Crows, some kind of crows. Crows were involved. Birds were there. But I came over to take a look at it after you got it set up, and I was initially like really kind of not put off by it, but I was like, oh man, this is a whole lot of different tiles, because you have all of the tiles set up at the very beginning of the game here, and it took a few rounds for me to realize that I needed to just focus on the ends of the rows, because those are the actions I'm going to take. Obviously, I want to look 1 or 2 or maybe even a 3rd layer deep on a row to see what kind of things I'm unlocking that you could then pick up on your turn, but it seemed a little overloady at first until I got a feel for it, is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, there is a mechanic in the game where after you take your tiles, you can place a gem onto one of the other tiles that's already out on the board that nobody has taken. And if the other players want to take that, in order to take that tile, they need to discard one of their own gems, which means they can't reserve a tile with it. There are some bonus chips that allow you to get gems back if they've been removed from the game, but I think there are only 2 or 3 of those in the whole game, and they may not all be placed out at the beginning because they're not all out on the board. but those reserved tiles are really useful, especially at the end of the game, because if you don't have a gem to discard, you simply can't take a tile that somebody has reserved, and you may have to pass on your turn taking a tile because you can't take one that's been reserved.
Yeah.
So that is really the only reason you need to look at the interior of the board, and at the beginning that's not going to be as powerful because everybody's got these gems.
Yeah.
Whereas at the end, if you are the only one with gems left, that can be very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm. And as such, you had a token on the last tile, and I did not get to take the final tile in the game.
You still won the game by like 10 points.
Yes, but
it was a good game. I liked it a lot. It is not quite, in my opinion, as good as Pot de Vin. I would take that over this, but this is also, it's very adorable. It's simple to teach once you understand what's going on, and for a small box game, I wouldn't hesitate to bring it out or recommend it.
yeah. So that was Spirits of the Forest, Thundergriff Games.
Thundergriff.
Other one I want to talk about, I had a chance to swing by the Queen Games booth and play a demo of Franchise. This is a game about developing franchised businesses across the country. I, unsurprisingly, chose the player board that gave me a burger and also the red player color.
It was very convenient for you.
Specifically designed for me. So basically, when we started halfway through the game of Franchise, they kind of skipped the first few rounds.
I think you said you started in like the sixth round.
We were like 5 or 6 rounds in. But basically, you have a map of the United States, and it has cities all over the board in 3 different levels. You have small towns, and you have a medium and a large town. And depending on the size of the town is going to determine how many of your specific, I guess, outposts or business franchise locations can go in a city. The small towns can only hold 1 of anybody's stuff. The medium ones can hold 2 or 3, and the big ones can hold, I think, like 5 all the way up to like 8 or 9.
Yeah, I think New York and LA both had 8 in them.
But on your turn, basically, everybody's going to start in a corner of the board. On your turn, you're going to be marketing, quote-unquote, in any cities you currently exist in, which is establishing more of your franchise locations on the little wheel icon for that particular city. And then you can also do one expansion where you go along one of the routes from a city you currently are in to another city, and depending on the kind of connection, it can be either, free $1, $3, $5, or $7 to establish that particular connection. Basically, different levels of highways, and the little towns have just like little free roads going to them, and obviously like the New York to Chicago, quote-unquote, freeway is the 7 cost or something like that.
Those are all printed on the board ahead of time,
Oh, yeah.
so they'll never vary.
But the way that it's going to work is you also have the board split up into kind of, I think, like 8 regions. Maybe it's 10 different regions. And as you finish out each of the little cities by having, a majority of a specific, a certain player has a majority in that city, you're going to score that city. Whoever is the majority gets some points, and everybody leaves some tokens on the board, because once a region has completed with all of its cities scoring and all of the little the small towns also having a token on it, that region is then going to score as well. So you kind of have like 2 different layers of area control playing it at any time in Franchise. I'm kind of it isn't it has a good thematic kind of feel to it, except for the fact that everybody's business is completely different. Like, if this was we are all burger chains, I think that would make a little bit more sense, because then a city wins the burger chain in that city. But
right now it's you have hamburgers and also hotels and a mechanic.
And a mechanic.
And a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And those things are all competing for space.
Yeah, if burgers win in Seattle, then nobody can fix their car. So beyond that part of it, that part, not the most thematic, but I felt like the way that it developed in terms of your franchising, you're growing out your network of your buildings, it really did work well, and it felt natural to me. Shane and I both work for a franchise company, and we feel that kind of stuff like, okay, well, if you put more stores into a specific city, then your strength in that city increases. And obviously you want to expand out along the right routes that make sense for you to go to this city over, and kind of get the area control that way. Money was tight, but never super tight. You get 4 of these tiles that are kind of like a freebie tile that either give you $10 for free, or you get to expand a second time. Or what's the other one? There's one.
You can do a second marketing in a city
That's
that
right.
you have on a turn, because normally you can only market once in each city.
Yeah, and we played probably 6-7 rounds of it to finish out the game. So we played about the second half of the game. And I was really surprised how quickly it ramped up once we really started going for it. Is once the cities start filling up and you start scoring these cities, the cities and the regions just start going really, really fast. And you find yourself like all of a sudden closing out 2 or 3 giant regions in a turn or two. And it just, the end of the game comes very quickly if you're not aware of the way that it could go.
Well, part of that is that it has a little bit of a Schottentotten or battle line style scoring, where as soon as you can prove nobody can beat you in a city, that city closes. You don't need to fill up all of the spaces, because otherwise people would just leave stuff and force the person who already had the majority to finish out all their cities, and that would slow the game down considerably. I think the other thing that made those tiles really useful that you were talking about is that when you use them, if you take them for the money, that keeps the game moving because you can keep doing stuff. And you get what is equivalent to 3 points plus $1 worth of money. If you don't use them at all, if you don't need to use them, you get 3 points for them at the end of the game. So there's not a penalty to using those tiles, so people are going to use them and the game is going to keep rolling on instead of being afraid to use them because they're worth a whole bunch of points at the end and not wanting to use them and then the game grinding to a halt.
Yeah, that was definitely well balanced. Shane, do you have any interest in this one?
I do. What is the release on that?
They are going to be kickstarting this one. I think it was end of this month.
The 24th
Yeah,
of this
so
month.
Cool.
And they're going to have it to people by November, December.
Sure they are.
Oh, I mean, yeah, they already are printing them. But,
Yeah.
whatever, that's their business.
Right. I'll probably swing by and try to do a demo of that tomorrow.
Yeah, it's worth getting a demo of, and I am interested in it. I really like the layering of the area control, and it felt weirdly thematic.
Right.
Except for the fact that burgers beat mechanics all the time. Because burgers are delicious.
Unless your car isn't working. In which case, no amount of hamburgers is going to solve your problem.
Yeah.
Unless you can walk to the burgers.
Yep. That is Franchise, coming from Queen Games to Kickstarter in late August. Any other thoughts on the day? Shane, anything else you saw that was really cool?
I mean, I didn't do anything too exciting. I got the cereal game.
Oh, yeah.
So
And a box of cereal.
And a box of...
Do you have the box of cereal?
Frankenberry.
Yeah. Where is it?
Ooh.
Where's the Frankenberry?
It's hiding.
Okay. Did you get your
Strategically
cereal game signed by Count Chocula himself?
I didn't. My original intent of going over there was because Count Chocula was allegedly there, which turned out to be untrue.
Unacceptable.
So I bought cereal. It was expensive.
So today Shane bought a $20 box of cereal. That's what that is Thursday at Gen Con right there. They can sell us a box of cereal for $20. We picked up a few other things. I got Expand City from Breaking Games. Got Reef from Plan B Next Move. And
Did you get the $10 fish expansion?
I think they just gave me the fish.
Okay.
Oh, don't tell everyone.
Yeah, the guy told me it was
Nobody
40
got-
for the base game and
nobody
10 if
got
you wanted the
fish.
fish.
Nobody got fish today. Ha ha ha.
I've got one more.
Oh yeah, what do you got?
I played Team Up, which is a game about stacking a pallet for shipping.
That is
It
freaking
comes
awesome.
with a little tiny wooden pallet, which
Tiny
is
wooden
adorable,
pallets.
and a bunch of different shaped wooden blocks. And you have a deck of cards, and on your turn, you're going to flip over a card, and it's either going to give you a color of red, white, and blue, which are the colors that are on some of these blocks. And the color is going to be only on one side of each of the blocks to tell you which is the top. Or it's going to give you a shape, so maybe square boxes or long boxes or whatever, rectangular boxes. And on your turn, when you flip over that card, you need to take one of these pieces and put it onto the palette. You can't stack the like shapes or colors right on top of each other, and you can't put two of the same shape right next to each other. But other than that, you're trying to create almost like Tetris in 3 dimensions, where when you complete a row of the palette stack, you are going to get 5 points, but then you're going to lose points for any pieces you can't place at the end of the game, or any time you flip over a card and you don't have that piece left to be able to place, because, there's a certain number of cards that are blue, but there's also a certain number of cards that are rectangles, and if you use the blue rectangle on the blue, maybe you won't have it when you flip over a rectangle card. This is sort of like Hanabi, where the perfect score is 25 points when you've completed 5 rows of this palette stack, theoretically. But I think in our demo, we got like -4. We didn't do very good. A lot of that was because we drew a lot of the rectangular boxes early in the game, and we didn't have them later. But one of the things that they were saying at the Helvetique booth that I was at was that if you go through this and you do poorly, like we did, you can just take the stack, flip it back over, and go again and try to beat your score, so that you don't necessarily have to play a different game every time. If you think that the shuffle you got you could have done better with, then just go at it again. It was cool. I mean, it wasn't the most groundbreaking game I've ever seen. It was very neat, though, but I have learned that you do not buy a big box of wooden blocks at Gen Con, particularly not in the morning of the first day. I learned that from the climbers last year.
Oh, boy.
So I did not pick this one up. It's something I might keep an eye on if it's...
Yeah, might swing back around.
No. If it's at a discounted price on the internet a little later, I might pick it up. But that's about where I am at on this game.
Okay. So, this is cooperative, yeah?
Yes.
Was there any reason to play it at any particular player count? Like, do you think it would change at all if 1, 2, 3, or 4 people were playing it?
I don't know, maybe if one of your players was really spatially challenged,
So just
it would change.
More arguing and fighting. Like, that almost seems like the kind of thing that I would want to play 1 or 2 players.
You could. I mean, there's really no reason why there would be a player count on this game. As long as you had everybody able to get to the pieces. I would say play it at a player count where you can converse about a strategy.
Yeah.
Because you are all working together. If one person thinks we're putting all of the squares on this part of the palette and one person thinks something else, then you're going to come into a problem when you get to those people's turns. So maybe 3 or 4 players is good because you can talk between each other and come up with a coherent strategy that everybody understands. It doesn't get sort of out of hand. But yeah, there's no reason why not.
Yeah. So it is Team Up.
Team Up.
By
Helvetique.
Helvetique. We also had an opportunity to go talk to Asmodee Digital.
We did.
Which is
that was
interesting.
cool.
We got to sit down with 2 of their people and talk about some of the upcoming games. Big announcements that they had in their press conference today. They are bringing, let's see, Scythe and Terraforming Mars
Should be
to
out
Steam.
in the next month and a half.
They're-
By early September.
Yeah, and that was really exciting. Had a chance to poke at the Terraforming Mars app and just kind of take a look at the interface. It's really, really pretty. It's very sharp. It's very slick. Like, if you've played the Race for the Galaxy app on your phone, it has kind of that futuristic sheen to it. Obviously completely different because Terraforming Mars is a different game. But I just got that kind of slickness to it. And
it's got the same card issue, which is that both of those games have cards where you need to be able to see all the details on the card. But on an app implementation, that can be a problem because if you just leave them out there, it's going to take up your whole screen or you're going to go blind trying to read them.
Yeah.
So they have a similar way where you can minimize the cards and then pull them up to play and see everything. It looked very good.
Yeah, it had a really sharp just kind of HUD kind of display where you can see at a very quick glance your production on everything. And, you can tap into your cards really quickly and see that kind of stuff. I did jostle the iPad slightly, and my production did not change, though. So we have gotten our contractually obligated Terraforming Mars joke into this podcast now.
Yeah. Okay.
Very good, very good. They said Scythe is on the way. They announced that, Gloom and 5 Tribes and Bang. Those are the other ones that were kind of
that
like,
are coming the end of this year.
this is really cool. And then the other absolute bombshell is that they are releasing a Gloomhaven digital game. That is not directly just the board game, that top-down kind of look. It looks like it's actually kind of like a 3D, almost adventure turn-based game or something.
Yeah, one of the things that the Asmodee Digital rep, and I don't remember her name, honestly, I'm sorry about that, but what she was saying was that they were really interested in taking the worlds of board games and not necessarily creating a faithful recreation of the game itself, but creating something that was more utilizing the value that digital games can bring in the world of the board game. So creating essentially IPs out of board games and working to create more of an adventure style game or like a first person style game in that way from that. And they're doing it with Mansions of Madness, they had said, and that's what this Gloomhaven game is going to be. We saw a little bit of the play, and you're moving through a space from a first person perspective. You're taking on enemies, but it does, you can still see the hexes on the floor. It's very cool.
Yeah, it looks
But it
really
is definitely
sharp.
not, don't buy this and think you're going to get Gloomhaven, because that would be an incredible value. But, I mean, that's not what this is. They're just bringing that idea of Gloomhaven and putting it forth into a different product, which I think is a smart idea.
Yeah. Shane, have you ever had any contact with Gloomhaven?
I have it on my shelf.
Okay.
Ooh.
I looked at it, and there was 18 boards that I needed to punch through, and
Yeah.
I put it right back.
I feel like that's the same way that one of the several reasons we never picked up Gloomhaven is because we looked at that box and we're just like, we're never going to get to do this thing.
I feel like if I do crack into it, though, it's something that I would play frequently.
Yeah.
Because it does have the solo option.
Yeah, that's true. You can always just set it up on a table somewhere and just leave it there for a few days. We have a very large cat.
I have
And
5 kids.
that's also very true. You can put it on a slightly higher table.
You should keep some of them off of the table.
Yeah.
Don't put them on the table.
That's where they sleep.
But I like this idea of bringing games like this that are unmanageable in some scenarios. Like,
for a digital implementation.
yeah, having a digital implementation of it, because I would like to play Gloomhaven because, from what I understand, those who have played it say it is a fantastic experience and a very, very good game. Just solid mechanically, great story, all that stuff. But I just simply cannot justify having that game because I will not physically play it. And having an option to sit down on Steam and play through something in the world that may or may not be super similar to it, I think is a really interesting and exciting move, especially for that IP.
I think I was less interested in the one unique game or one or two unique games that they were talking about as the idea of taking board game worlds and bringing them elsewhere. I mean, that's something we've seen with role-playing games before, where role-playing games create such a rich environment with all of the content that they bring in that it's very easy to translate them into books or into board games or into video games or into hats or whatever. But to have board games being so fleshed out in their thematic ties and having so much to them
Yeah.
that you can just create another type of creative product with them, I think that's really cool. And even if you're not a super thematic gamer, which, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a super thematic gamer, but I think it's interesting that we are creating that much lore around board games, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah, I am really excited about ways we are attempting to advance the hobby. You all heard me rant about that on the hype list when I tried to defend Void from Oink last episode for being an opportunity to expand the art of board games.
But
anyway,
it's not here, so...
after Asmodee Digital, we also went over to the Direwolf Digital booth. We had a meeting with Matt over there at Direwolf Digital and kind of just talked about and showed off the way that they're kind of supporting Clank and Clank in Space. They have Clank in Space implemented on the app with kind of scenarios and kind of objectives to enhance your cardboard version of the game, which is really neat. And the Clank app itself for basic Clank, obviously, can kind of run the game and help you do the scoring and the management of all that, and that's really sharp. Have you used either of the apps? Because you have both Clanks, yeah? Or at least Space?
I have downloaded the app, I've just never used it.
Okay. Yeah, what they were saying about with Clank in Space, for example, is that you might have a objective up on the board, like you need to collect a secret tome or something, and once you do that, you tap that and it gives you another objective and or a reward for doing so. So it brings some kind of a more objective-based, rather than just get your artifact and get out, to Clank. And I'm excited to see that, and from what I got out of talking with Matt there, is that they are looking to make that more robust for the single player, with not specifically a campaign or any kind of legacy, but a way that your objectives can kind of help shape you or your character and give you further development in the game, over a number of solo plays of Clank in Space. And the other thing that was kind of interesting, we got a promo card, and this is just kind of one of these, okay, cool, so you're going to tease us. The promo card referred to mechanics that are not in Clank in Space and are not in the new expansion for Clank in Space, because this is a promo card from a future set.
All right.
Which kind of answered some of my questions, because I remember this time last year when Clank in Space was surprise, here it is, everybody was like, okay, so they're moving on to a new world for Clank, and then the second expansion for Clank Classic came out, and they're like, okay, so Clank in Space was a one-off, and then a month ago they told everybody Clank in Space Apocalypse is getting an expansion. And talking to Matt and talking about what their strategy is here, apparently they have a lot of things in development for all of the different kind of facets of Clank, beyond just supporting those two veins of games. And he says that, they have apparently they're developing Clank out several years at this point to use that system in other formats as well. So we might see not just more Clank base things, but maybe other things that use the mechanics of Clank. And I thought that was a really neat thing to get out of talking with the digital meeting, because you don't really often get a lot of kind of what's coming down the pipeline, but they're apparently really going to roll with this Clank thing. And obviously, I'm sure Renegade is very excited about that as well.
Cornerstone product right now, so.
Yeah, I have Clank in Space, but have not had a chance to play it yet. We've played most of the classic Clank stuff. I enjoy it. It's a fun system.
I think it's kind of interesting to compare how they're using the Clank in Space app to sort of give you additional content that realistically could be implemented in decks.
Yeah.
But to give you that additional content versus the way that the app was presented in Cryptid, which is a game that's coming from Osprey Games that we got to do a full demo. I'm talking about it right now.
Yes.
That we got to do a demo for, which also has an app, but a lot of that app implementation that you do in Cryptid, just for a little base overview, is a game where each player is going to receive a clue as to what the habitat of the particular cryptid you're hunting is or is not, depending on whether you're playing the basic or the advanced game. It will be in this spot in the basic game. And so maybe my clue is it's within 1 square of water, and Jake's clue is it's in the mountains, and Shane's clue is it's within 2 squares of a green building.
2 squares, Shane.
We're all going to be placing pieces out on the board to say, it is or isn't in this space, and trying to guess what the other player's clues are so that we can find the one hexagon on the board that meets all of our clues. And they have it tuned in for certain numbers of players so that there's always one hex that meets the clues in the different combinations that they've given you. But what the designer was saying was there is an app to it, but it's meant to be done at the beginning of the game, where you receive your information from the app at the beginning of the game, and then you put the app away. Mm-hmm. It is there to facilitate setup because there is so much hidden information here. But once you get everything set up and everybody's received their clues, which you can do either on the app or in analog, then it's done and it's away, and it helped you do the thing that you didn't really want to do, and now it's gone and you can play it like any other board game. So I think that's an interesting converse to the way Clank is having all this additional content that could have been decks added onto their app, because Direwolf Digital is firstly a digital designer, whereas Cryptid from Osprey, which by the way has beautiful artwork, I didn't say that, but it's absolutely beautiful Quantum Moria artwork, has that starting app that then goes away.
I was just looking at my phone to see if I could download the Cryptid app. It's not on the App Store yet.
Well, you can't buy the game either, so...
This was one of my very most anticipated games, and I feel really bad that I completely forgot we had a chance to take a look at that game today.
It was very early in
the day, and time has passed. But it lived up to my expectations as well. I'm really excited to get in there and play like 100 games of this in a row. It's deduction without being social deduction, but it is social. You know what I mean? It's not social deduction. It's deduction where you have to talk to other people and they have to kind of... You're manipulating your guesses to not give away information rather than trying to mechanically social deduct out rolls of... I hate social deduction so much. I don't want to do any more werewolf crap.
It's deduction where you don't have to lie.
Yeah, there you go. And you just... It's more based on asking the right questions rather than trying to catch somebody who's deceiving you.
Yes.
And then when you do it wrong, you can tell the truth. And sometimes you can fix your mistake, or sometimes the game's over.
Yeah.
Well, I like that in the rulebook there was a section for, if you screwed it up, here's what happens. Like, if you can fix it, fix it. If you can fix it and you did a bad, you place an extra piece as your sort of punishment for having done a bad.
And if you're Shane, the game's over.
Aww. Well,
it was an honest mistake.
Yeah, that is Cryptid. It is coming from Osprey Games, and I guarantee I will be talking about this game whenever it is released. They said, I think, fall, October, sometime of that. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Everybody, it is 1 a.m.
Okay.
Would you like to go to sleep?
That's fine.
Anybody got a number one thing that they want to look at tomorrow?
I've got nothing.
I would like to get to the middle of the exhibit hall because I did not ever make it to the middle of the exhibit hall.
I didn't make it lower than 2,200. I started at the high end of the exhibit hall numbers, and I've been working my way back towards the low numbers. And I only got through, I think, 8 rows, which is not gonna bode well considering I've got a very full schedule tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got a lot of meetings tomorrow, so hopefully, in just a few seconds, you will hear some very interesting conversation after we have talked to people on Friday at Gen Con. This is only Thursday. All right, we are back live. I'm recording you all laughing. All right, it is the end of Friday night of Gen Con. Who are the tallest people you remember seeing today? I saw Chris Kirkman. He's very tall.
There was that one guy at the Strike Tournament who was very tall.
Tony from Rolling Dice and Taking Names is tall.
No, the other dude.
There's another guy.
The guy you measured up to.
Oh, yeah.
The skinny.
We were sitting at the table, and we wanted to know if that guy was tall, so I stood next to him. He was slightly taller than me.
Oh, I was thinking about the guy who had the plaid hat.
Welcome back to another episode of Tall
that
Mechanics,
was giving us a
where we talk about the tallest people that we see at board game conventions. Anyway, this is the end of Friday. We have played a bunch of games. We talked to a whole lot of people today, but we are already approaching an hour on this episode after a 1.5 recording session, so maybe we'll make this one a little quicker. I don't know. Danielle, you want to start us out? What was something we did today?
The first thing we did today was play Homebrewers, which is a game that is in development, should be coming out fairly shortly, not next month, but, soonish, from Greater Than Dice Hate Me Games. Mm-hmm. And this is a dice-driven game in the vein of Brewcrafters. It is certainly not Brewcrafters the dice game, because in Homebrewers you are not trying to run a production brewery, you are trying to improve your own personal homebrew recipe by brewing multiple times and increasing the quality of your beers through repetition and also through adding different kind of ingredients. Mm-hmm. It is still being tweaked here and there, but I really did like the way that the mechanic worked. I like that they included sanitization as part of your process, because that's real important when you make beer. It was interesting, and I really liked the way it worked. It wasn't overly complicated once you understood what was going on and what your options were. It was really easy to decide what you were doing. There was a little bit of negotiation with the dice trading mechanic that is involved in it right now, so when you roll at the beginning of every round, you can choose to either keep what you've rolled to do actions with those things or trade with the other players, because thematically you are all in a homebrew club together and this is a friendly wager. So I like that there was a reason to want to trade with the other players, because that helped you actually all do better.
Mm-hmm. One thing I really enjoyed about the way that the game played, you have on your personal player board, you have the 4 different beers that you can brew. You have the IPA, the porter, the stout, and the ale.
I yelled at
Kirkman. But anyway, as you add flavors to those beers and kind of refine your beer style there, the flavor cards that you slide into each of the 4 different kinds of beer will give you different buffs every time you brew that particular beer. Maybe you get $2 extra when you brew it because everybody loves it, or maybe it increases one more level of the beer that is to the next of it on the rack, which is kind of a neat thing. And you're just generally working to get your tracks, the reputation tracks for each of the 4 beers up to the top. So if you were the first person to max out that track, you are locked in as number 1, and you will get first place points for that at the end of the game when you get to a beer tasting. I also really enjoyed the way that you had this kind of rotating action every round of the game. It's, by months, and this calendar action is a different kind of event or special power or special thing you can take depending on what comes up from a specific tile that round. And I liked having your base 4 or 5 actions off the dice, and then you have that calendar action as well that gives you something that might be a little different, and also you can boost that with a little bit of money to get a kind of a double power action. I really enjoyed the dice mitigation in this game, which is super important in a dice game, especially with how many dice games there are in the world today.
There's also a fairly easily used mechanic where you could pay some extra money from your reserve to be able to take any of the extra actions that you wanted at the end of your turn. So even if you didn't roll what you wanted and you weren't able to trade for what you wanted, and the calendar action wasn't the thing that you needed to be able to do, if you had $3, which is not difficult to acquire in this game. I don't think there was a point where any of the 4 of us who were playing it were really just unable to come up with $3 for more than one turn in a row. you could really just pay that $3 and take whatever action you needed to take and not be set back for multiple turns because you couldn't do a thing you meant to do.
Yeah, and I also really enjoyed as the 4 different tracks for the beer there have some random tiles placed out on them that as you cross certain thresholds, you get additional bonuses. You might get money, you might get other upgrades, you might get additional ingredients, so that you have an opportunity to kind of plan it out and kind of get that cascading track effect, which will come back as we talk about another game later on in a different way, also the dice game.
The other thing was that at the end of the game, you're going to get double the quality points of your lowest quality beer. And once you've maxed out a beer, there's no reason to continue improving it. Mm-hmm. So it's not really about just making one beer really well and just spamming that over and over and over again. You really need to be making sure that you are putting your efforts in across the board so that everything is getting better, because that's the way you're really going to score points. And I think that was a little bit different than Brewcrafters, where you could find a good recipe and sort of coast on that for a little bit.
Yeah, so they're looking to kickstart this in the fall, probably in the next, I think, two months or something. I think it's September-ish, but I'm sure we'll be talking more about that when it comes back around. Shane, what would you get into this morning? We kind of split off to do our demo.
This morning we did Sabotage.
Okay. Tim Fowers games.
Yeah, just a prototype. It was okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Burgle Bros meets Captain Sonar.
Okay.
So
it's kind of interesting. So I don't know a whole lot about how this one works here. It's a 2v2 thing. And
yes.
How are you, like, how does the Captain Sonar thing fit into this? Obviously, you're trying to find the other player.
Right. So this game, you roll dice, and then you tell them where a quadrant in which you're starting at, and then from there you basically do the Captain Sonar movements.
So just kind of cat and mousing it back and forth again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's on Kickstarter now. It's yet again an interesting Tim Fowers box. The box itself folds open to become the shield between the two player teams. I'd like to physically see this game. I don't know if I have a whole lot of interest in it. I feel like Captain Sonar pretty much nailed it in terms of what I want from that particular game.
And we've already got Burgle Bros from Tim Fowers, so if that's what the combination is, this may be one we pass up. But
it's cool to see that floating around the con. Obviously, you can, again, this is releasing after Gen Con, so you cannot go to the Tim Fowers Games booth, but you can check out Sabotage on Kickstarter. We also had a meeting. We got a chance to check out 2 of the upcoming games from, this is kind of in opposition to what we talked about in the last segment from yesterday. Instead of board games moving to the digital realm, digital video games moving to the board game realm. We had a meeting with the team at Paradox Interactive that is bringing over Crusader Kings and Europa Universalis. Mm-hmm. And both of these are big, complex kind of, at least EU is a civ building and kind of war game on the computer. And they're bringing both of these things to the tabletop. And I don't want to get into the description of these games because they're at least EU is super complex in terms of 4Xing it in medieval Europe and lots of war and fighting. And Crusader Kings had a whole lot going on as well. But I think the thing that I was most excited to see is that they're really focused on bringing these giant, big, complex games to the tabletop without simplifying them so much. Like EU being such a huge game, though it's not a game that I particularly ever want to play, it's cool to see them saying, some of the scenarios in this are going to be 6-7+ hours, because that's the depth that they want to actually bring to the tabletop.
Yeah, I think they were saying that they're going to do individual play sessions, which were going to be closer to 2 or 3 hours, but then you could do a full play experience that was going to be essentially a full day. Mm-hmm. Your Twilight Imperium length story arc.
The Colonist?
Yeah.
Yeah, in time length, but not really in gameplay at all. So don't take that particular parallel. But if you are a big fan of sort of dudes on a map, area control, move around the map, I take over your provinces, you lay a claim to my province, then we move some navy boats to bring random gray men from Portugal. I don't understand how those men got there, and I was in control of Portugal. So, it is very much that. It is very much that type of game.
Yeah, big and dense.
Crusader Kings was a little bit more based on your personal family. You are the heir of a dynasty, or I think we were the Normans in our playthrough, and you are trying to marry into a family and produce heirs, and then go through and tax and crusade and increase the power of your particular family, as opposed to just a sort of macro level scale thing.
Yeah.
Europa Universalis is much more, you're in charge of the whole country, and you're looking at it from a map level perspective, whereas Crusader Kings, like the game, you are much more focused on the family that you are controlling. The other thing that I found really neat about that game is it is based on these attribute tokens, where you have good attributes and bad attributes, and they all go into a bag, and whether or not you succeed on something depends on what tokens you draw out of that bag, and you get a certain number of pulls depending on what you're doing, and good traits are generally a success, and bad traits are generally a failure, but depending on what you're trying to do, certain specific traits may be a critical success that are actually bad. Like if you're trying to invade something, having a cruel trait come out of that bag may be really useful. And what traits you put into your bag based on your family members is going to have a great effect on what you do later in the game. And I thought that was really interesting. That one looked, of the two, much more appealing to me.
Yeah. And beyond those two, I do understand that they're looking at bringing some of their other video game properties to the tabletop. Most interesting to me is Cities Skylines, which is a city management and city planning game that kind of takes SimCity to the max. You know, if you played the old SimCity games, it's like that. But in 2016, 2017 level of technology and depth, the game looks... Cities Skylines is so freaking beautiful. Good. And the depth of management in that game is exceptional. And I would really be excited to see, knowing that they want to keep things on the heavier end, what they would do with that in a tabletop scenario. Just like having a really good high-level city management game would be I'm hoping would be a lot of fun. And it's definitely something that's on my radar, and I'm hoping that we get to see from them in the next year or two.
We'll have to wait and see.
We also had an opportunity to stop by the Green Couch Games booth at just the perfect time to get a preview of the next game that Jason Kotarski is putting on Kickstarter. It's a game called Into the Black Forest. We actually had a chance to sit down with the designer as well, and we played through a game of this thing. It's a card game like a lot of the Green Couch games.
All of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're all card games. But so this one is a game in which you have a deck of cards that are numbered and they're in 4 suits, but this is not a trick-taking game per se. What you have is you have a card in front of all 4 players at the beginning of each round that has different areas you can play cards onto. There's the long side of the card, the higher card will win, the other long side of the card, the lower card will win. On one of the short ends of the card, you're playing cards face down with the goal of being a specific objective from that card, and then the other short end of that wants to match the suit of a card at one of the long ends, depending, again, on what the card is. And the way it's going to work is everybody has a specific deck of cards. You're going to start by drawing 6 of them. They're balanced so that everybody has a set of different numbers and a set of suits of the whole, amount of cards that there would be in the game. And at the beginning of each round, you're going to look at this card and you're just going to start playing cards around it. And once the 3 sides that are played face up are full, you're going to score the card. And any card that wins comes out of the game, but the cards that did not win on a specific side will go back into that player's hands. It was a really interesting kind of play with the cards there because you had to play a card somewhere, and if you'd already played on one spot and you had to play it on a different spot, you could say, all right, I'm just going to play this here, even though I know it's not going to win, because I'm going to get this card back. The other thing that I found really interesting is that the high and low sides of the long sides of the card, the points that you scored were the points of the card that lost.
Yeah, so you could essentially tank. If somebody had put a 12 out on the high side, because 12 is the maximum card value, you could just tank that and put a 1 below it. You know you're not going to win. You'll get the card back, but they're only going to get 1 point, and they're going to lose their 12 value card, which is a bummer.
Yeah, so in terms of Green Couch's games in general. I feel like this is one of the more thinkier ones that they've released, and I really enjoyed this first play of it. It's one that I think he is planning on kickstarting again late this month or early September, and I cannot wait to get more plays of this in. This is a really smart design. They're still tweaking some parts of the scoring, but I really encourage everybody to keep an eye out for Into the Black Forest.
One of the other things I just want to mention really quick, if you listen to our filler preview back, a bunch of episodes ago, we talked about Filler, which had been kickstarting from Green Couch Games, and we had said that the preview copy that we got didn't have any of the artwork that we assumed would be final at the time. We're like, oh, they're not going to have jelly donuts on everything. We did get to see some of that much more advanced artwork. I think it might have actually been final artwork at that point. And they have filled it out just as we suspected they would, with all kinds of different pastries. And they have done a reworking on some of the iconography, so that looks a little better. They have redone all of the chef cards, so they are not only significantly better in art quality, but they are really awesomely diverse. I really like it a lot, and that game does look, as we had suspected it might, a lot better than the pre-production copy that we had gotten to play. I just wanted to touch on that, because I know when we talked about it, we're like, well, I assume they're going to do this. They always do it, but we got to see it. That is what's happening.
We also got a quick tour through AEG's catalog. Just kind of got to walk through and a quick look at all their stuff. And my takeaway from AEG's game presentation this year is that they're really doubling down on releasing some really strong titles instead of just releasing a whole bunch of titles. I was like, AEG is one of the companies that a few years ago I was like, okay, so they do Love Letter, they do Smash Up, and then they started getting Mystic Vale started producing more and more content.
Well, they don't do Love Letter anymore.
Yeah.
Sort of hurt that too.
But in this last batch of games, they've got Space Base, and what else did we saw? We saw the Captain is Dead, the new the new standalone for that. Obviously, more Mystic Vale. I was really surprised about with the Mystic Vale content is that this latest expansion, not Conclave, but the other one, is that it's actually a new starting set for people who want to get into Mystic Vale, that don't want to go to the base box and then work their way back up from that. So it actually is a new complete base set that you can start from and just kind of build your set from there if you want to.
And be used with the expansions as well. They also showed us War Chest, which looked like a 2 or 4 player sort of tactical battling game where you are going to take 4 different kinds of warrior pieces onto your side, and they all have different special abilities and movements, sort of like a really expanded version of chess where you're going to have your 4 types of workers, and then you're going to take the chips for those workers and put them into your bag, and you'll draw chips out of the bag on your turn, and you will be able to play what you've drawn from the bag to be able to take the special abilities of the matching workers or move the matching workers in an attempt to control or to get all of your control discs out onto the control points on the board. So it is very much a sort of abstract tactical game. If that's something you're looking for, with a little bit of cool variety in the different types of workers that you can have, that is something that I think they have out now.
Another title that we had a chance to take a quick just look at, not actually play, an upcoming one from AEG called Scorpius Freighter, which is kind of a resource, management, and you're obviously fulfilling contracts and stuff like that. But sorry, that's the worst description of a game ever. What interested me about it is that,
Hey, y'all.
you have 3 different planets out in front of you, and they operate as rondelles in kind of a push your luck kind of sense, because the game will end depending on when the rondelles are completed. And you're obviously moving a particular ship around the rondelles to take actions. And as the ships go around the planets more and more, they start getting more and more, quote-unquote, heat on them, is what Todd, the AEG rep, was telling us. And I just am a sucker for rondelles, so this is
space.
And space. So this is something that wasn't even on my radar. And then we walked by and he started talking about it and kind of showing us the way that the rondelles and the mechanics are going to work on that. And I'm really actually kind of interested in this. I'm hoping to see more about that in the next few months.
You have fun with that.
Not interested in space?
I don't like your space.
You don't want another space game?
No.
Space.
It did look interesting. It didn't really terribly look up my bag. I do like a good rondelle game, but I already have that in Sealand, which is
very true.
Not in space, it's in Holland.
That is. A title that I picked up today that was not on the Gen Con Geek preview that I'm extremely excited about we picked up a copy of T.I.M.E Stories Brotherhood of the Coast.
So good.
The next expansion just appeared in the middle of the afternoon, and I've been walking by the Asmodee booth again and again and again, and eventually it was there. They had a sign up earlier today saying, hey, it's coming, but we don't know when it's going to show up, so just kind of like wander by a lot, so I did. And so we have the new T.I.M E Stories expansion just out of the blue. Didn't even know it was going to be getting here yet. Hadn't really heard any buzz or beyond the fact that people were accepting pre-orders online. So, obviously, that means we're going to be playing T.I.M E Stories again very soon. And since we do that, that means we're going to be doing another spoiler episode in the near future. I'm very excited. It's been a minute since we've had any T.I.M E Stories.
I'm also very excited. I'm just having a hard time welling up excitement at the moment. It's 1:30 in the morning.
Yes.
So, I'm really excited to see how that goes. And I have a feeling this is going to be another major story point. Like the last scenario was a one-off bottle episode. I have a feeling based on the way that they have done a store promo that was in the Brotherhood of the Coast world, that it's one that's going to be in main storyline.
Yeah.
So if you are looking for something that is a starting point, this may not be it. But if you are all in with the main T.I.M E story, this may be a good deal for you.
Everybody play Lumen Fide. We also, this evening, had a chance to go hang out at the Rollin' Dice and Taking Names kind of event. They held their annual strike tournament, which is a thing that exists in the world now, where about 80 or 90 of us got together and played strike for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I am very excited that once again, gladiators in an arena is the official theme of strike.
Boo.
Hey, that's 100% of the time that this has been going on, that it's been officially decided, gladiators in an arena.
Boo.
But real... hats off to Marty and Tony. It was just a fantastic event. We were over at the Old Spaghetti Factory. It was a ticketed event for $10, and they just pulled out all the stops as best they could. They had a lot of publishers in there, and just a whole ton of fun. We played Strike, and some people threw dice into a bowl, and all of those foes were vanquished. And gladiators in an arena are superior.
They just did a phenomenal job with this event. Whether it was Dice in a Bowl or gladiators in an arena, they did a really great job. The venue was very well equipped to handle the amount of people that they had. I could not have asked for more as far as the food was. I mean, we got a good food. They had a great atmosphere. Everybody was really friendly. It was a really well managed event, and I think you really couldn't have asked for a better evening event. It
was a lot of fun. So good job, Marty and Tony. You guys kicked ass on that one. We closed out the night playing a whole bunch of games. Got some Mars Open to the table. I love that. Always a ton of fun. I definitely made 4 hole-in-ones out of the 9 courses. I'm feeling very, very proud of that. I'm apparently getting good at Mars Open.
Yeah, Jake whooped everybody's butt at Mars Open. 2 of us were at 40 or above on 9 holes, and you were at 19, I think.
19. Almost par. I'm going to start getting par on courses. I'm going to make this happen.
It'll be par for the course.
Okay, fine. I also, I have to say, it was a lot of fun to officially look in a rule book and see a course that I designed. When this was on Kickstarter back in the day, I backed at the design a course level. So we all played the Pretty Great Escape, which is hole, I think, 48 or 54 or something like that. It's up there. It's on the very last page, but it's complicated and overblown and everything that I've ever wanted to do with a tabletop golf game.
That's very specific.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very specific list. It was exactly that one thing, but I've checked that box off.
Yeah, we got to play a couple of other games that I think we're going to save to talk about in a little bit more depth when we get a longer episode and time spot to talk about them. But it was a fun time. The room that they have on that 3rd floor of JW Marriott is so good. It is the gaming space that people have been complaining that Gen Con didn't have. And I know there's been a lot of that the last couple of years, ourselves included, where you didn't have space that you could go and play the games that you just purchased from all these cool booths.
Yeah.
Because it was either that demo hall C and D, I think it is.
Yeah.
Where those tables can be booked by the companies, and it wasn't really a great space to be in. It was very cement and echoey and not a great space. This is a nice, it has soft surfaces to absorb the sound, so it's not super loud. There's tons of tables. There's good lighting when they don't mysteriously turn the lights off for a couple of minutes for some reason. So this is the space that Gen Con really needed, and they have been receiving feedback that they needed, and I think that it fills it really well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I'm hoping that continues to be a trend. And honestly, it encourages me to pick this particular hotel because it is in the hotel we are staying in.
Right. Like picking is an option.
Yeah, true. Hopefully, roll the dice and get the hotel that you need. But it's been good. It's been really nice to have that space to decompress and play games in a quiet, relaxing atmosphere with comfortable chairs, great lighting. It's about the size of like a Dice Tower Con or a Geekway to the West open gaming area. I mean, there's several hundred people in that room.
Yeah.
And it's only about a third full if you were to really just pack it in there.
We'll see tomorrow, because Saturday night will obviously be a big, busy night.
Oh, yeah. But it is approaching 2 a.m., so I feel like this is the moment for us to say we are done for the night.
And we'll talk to y'all tomorrow.
That is true.
As a Viking leader, I know a thing or two about what it looks like to fight off a whole horde of incoming attackers.
Gunner!
I also know about properly assembling and arming a fighting force, and sometimes some folks are just going to die in battle.
Okay, that's it. No more from you. We are talking about Run Fight or Die Reloaded, the newest Kickstarter from Grey Fox Games. They are not only bringing their beloved zombie survival game back into print, but they've updated it to reduce fiddliness and added new character combos, survivor health, and more minis and action dice.
Any Viking worth their salt could take on that whole zombie horde with their beard tied behind their back.
This new standalone game in the Run Fight or Die universe is everything you loved about the original but better. Check it out on Kickstarter until August 21st.
Grey Fox Games, quality games cleverly crafted.
All right, everybody, good morning. It is Sunday morning, and we are back for the final segment of our Gen Con daily recaps. We are recording this one, obviously, Sunday morning instead of Saturday night, because recording at 2 a.m. after having the traditional bottle share probably would not have been the best idea in the entire world.
Especially since a third of us was asleep. It's not nice to wake people up and make them talk about their day when they're nicely asleep and probably just want to continue being so.
If you would like to hear what it would be like to listen to a recap episode done after a bottle share, you may go listen to the Mile High Game Guys, because apparently they did decide to do that last night. Yeah. After leaving at 2 a.m., so hats off to the most podcast of all time over the Mile High Game Guys.
I have a feeling I feel better than everybody today.
Yes.
You did take a very long nap.
Shane, you made a very good choice and decided, you know what, I don't need to be up for the next 4 hours. I'm going to go to sleep. And I cannot fault you for that. But anyway, board games and tall people. Did anybody see anybody particularly tall yesterday?
Not that I recall.
I saw one or two very tall people in the exhibit hall, but... Is this joke done? Are we done with the tall people joke?
This joke's been done for 2 days.
No, it was fine the first 2 days. Okay. All right, so what did everybody get a chance to look at yesterday?
We did get a chance to run a demo of Comanauts, which is the new game that's coming out in the... It's not the Fables series, but in the Stuffed Fables style.
Adventure book is what they're calling the series.
Book series. Yeah. From Plaid Hat Games. It is the theme that is more geared towards adults, where you are trying to get this scientist out of a coma that he is in as a result of a lab accident, and you're doing this by going through his memories, which is the sort of surface level, I won't spoil anything, description of what that is. It is really kind of neat. Shane, you played Stuffed Fable, so you can speak to how this is different or the same as that.
It's pretty similar. The Stuffed Fables is more grid-based.
Okay.
With more grid tiles, so moving across the page is a little bit more time-consuming. Mm-hmm. This one had it broke up in more quadrants, and it was awesome. It was good.
It seemed like the goal of the design was to keep people moving from location to location more quickly. Right. The adventure book series that we're talking about here for Plaid Hat Games, Stuffed Fables was the first one, where you have a kind of a spiral-bound book of a few dozen pages, and those are going to form the maps that you're going to be traveling along. And one side will be the map board, and the other side, once you have, when you have the pages folded open, is story points and mechanics and stuff like that that is unique to the location. In Comanauts, the scenario we did, we started out in a house, and our goal was to explore around the house a little bit to figure out what's going on. And then the overall goal of the game is to track down the Marvin, the scientist himself, track him down and, I guess, follow him and get information from him so we can eventually get him out of this coma. But yeah, I was interested a lot by it. Every turn of the game, you're drawing a bunch of dice from the bag, and that kind of dictates your actions. I'm interested to see how it works over the whole game as you have more things you can do. One thing I was really surprised about in that first demo scenario is that we had several turns where it was just like, I guess I'm going to walk over here, and that's all you did because, maybe you didn't get a searching die or something like that.
He had also said, though, that the goal of that first scenario is to get you through it quickly, to teach you the mechanics. You're not supposed to spend a lot of time in that first room. You're supposed to, oh, this is what I do. Let me go somewhere interesting. Because you start in the first floor of a house, which is not, as far as exciting adventures goes, living room is fairly low on the scale.
Yeah.
Speak for yourself.
Okay.
One thing that I also thought was really interesting, and we only got a very little glimpse of this before we ended the demo, is that it looks like each page or each region of this adventure storybook you're going to be going to is done in a drastically different style. We left that memory of the living room, and the other location we were about to go to was like a comic book kind of land, and it looked like we were going to have some kind of an action-adventure kind of race kind of thing happening there. Stuffed Fables is pretty much just all one style all the way through, right?
Right, it's just a story the whole way through.
So I'm really interested to see this progress, and because I'm just kind of drawn in by the idea of a whole bunch of different worlds, a whole bunch of different memories that you're going to be going into to figure out what's going on and how we can save this doctor so he can save all of humanity.
I mean, the box art of Comanauts is like such a hodgepodge of things, of memories and fantasy, and it looks pretty awesome.
Didn't get a chance to really look at any of the other Plaid Hat game stuff. I looked kind of just over at Gen 7, which is the new Crossroads game that surprised everybody a few days ago. I didn't get a chance to go in and look at Neon Gods, which is the City of Remnants remake that I was really interested in. I might swing by and just kind of get a glance at that today, because the box cover is really neon, as you would expect from a game titled Neon Gods.
Imagine that.
I also got into play of a game called, let me pull this up real quick so I know 100% what it is, called Spirits of the Wild. And this is coming from Mattel, of all places. Mattel had a whole bunch of these kind of small box 2-player games available for demo and also for purchase. And I got to take a look at Spirits of the Wild, which is kind of a set collection game in which you and your opponent have a bowl of gems in front of you, and you're pulling them out of a bag and having some gems available in front of you. And on your turn, you're using one of a set of action cards that you both have the same cards to take 1 stone or 2 stones, or maybe refill some stones and take stones, with the goal of getting sets of colored stones on your personal player board. You have sections in there.
Stones?
Stones.
Stones?
Stones. Would you like me to say stones again?
You said it a lot.
Well, it is the only item in the game, so I will be saying it several more times. You get maybe like pairs of the same color, or a set of 3 of the same color, or one of as many of different colors as you can, or maybe there's a 5 of a kind, or a 3 in a pair. And what your goal is to obviously collect these, you ready for it?
No.
Stones, and put them onto your personal player board, so at the end of the game you will have scoring if you've completed specific sections. The thing that makes this really interesting also is that it becomes pretty interactive. Some of your cards, like if there's 2 take 1 stone cards, and once you play a card you flip it over, and when you flip those 2 cards over, on the back of it they have a power between them where you move this totem of a coyote onto the other player's board, and it blocks off one of their sections. There's another card, I think it's put 3 into the bowl and then move the coyote, also moves the coyote, obviously, to somebody else's space. And then there's a set of superpowers that you can use these, your final action card is to activate a spirit card, and these have special superpowers, like maybe it's draw 4 and take 1, or manipulate stones in a certain way, so on and so forth. But that one also refreshes all of your other cards, and not just your cards, but your opponent's cards as well. So as you're playing, you're both moving this coyote onto their board, hopefully to block them out, and then also hoping that they're the one that has to play the card to refresh all of the cards so that you don't have to take a turn to do that thing. It was really interesting, and I was really surprised to see Mattel bringing some new stuff to the market. They had a revamped version of Blockus for 2, Blockus Duo, and a number of other small box games that it looks like Mattel is really trying to get into that kind of 2-player small box space, and they're going for $15-20 a piece, which is a really good price point for that.
I mean, when you have all of the buying power of Mattel behind you, I imagine you get a pretty good deal at the manufacturer.
I got a chance to play One Deck Galaxy, which is the new One Deck game that's coming from Asmodee. I ran through a sort of extended demo. We were a couple of turns from the end of the game, so I won't say it was a full game, but it was enough to get the full experience of playing it for sure. It is very similar in mechanics to a lot of the things in One Deck Dungeon, which if you've played that or the expansion to that, you're going to be familiar with this. You're going to be taking cards which have different colored zones on them and numbers, and you'll roll a fistful of dice of the same colors, and you need to place dice of the color indicated on the card and at least the number indicated on the card onto it to score progress points onto these planets, and when you have earned enough progress equal to the population, you can take them as experience if you are familiar with the experience points that help you level up your abilities as a fighter, or if you get all the way to the higher level of progress, you can take the card and you will gain either more dice into your pool if you use it as an item, or a new special ability if you use it as I think they're called tools in this game. So you are repeatedly trying to roll you and your partner's dice, because this is a cooperative game, and trying to find the best way to combine them and modify them in order to earn as much progress on planets so that you can get the planets onto your board. Some things that are added new with this game is, instead of just being able to complete a planet, like I said, they're going to stay out there until you earn enough progress to take them as either XP or as a tool or item. And when you do, you're going to need to, if you take them as a tool or item, you're going to need to expend research if you're doing it as an item, or you're going to need to expend a rocket ship, because the idea is that you are actually establishing a colony on that planet, which is why you now have more dice. So you're going to need to be managing this other set of resources where you want your dice to get you progress on the planets as much as you can, but you also need to be using some of your dice to get these rocket ships and these research points, so that once you do complete the planet, you can actually take it off the board and bring it into your player area. That also makes it safe from the big bad in this game, which is an alien race that is trying to squish you, pretty much.
Squish.
They are going to be gaining progress every turn as well, and when they either get a certain amount of progress or there are a certain amount of planets left on the board because you haven't cleared them away, they're going to devour one of these planets and it will become a colony of theirs. And when they have 3 colonies, they're actually going to flip over and become stronger. The game is going to speed up, and once they have 6 colonies, you end the game. There is no real loss condition in this game. There is a series of paragraphs at the end. You compare your score to the different paragraph ranges, and you'll get a more or less good ending depending on how well you did. I have a feeling, based on what I was talking to the demoer, that they are still tweaking the difficulty on this a little bit. So we were not quite at the end, but we had just flipped the card over to the big bad alien side, and we were already into the good ending, so I have a feeling they may do a little bit of tweaking on this. They said they had already adjusted it twice at the con, so they are actively beta testing this. And it is a fun game. I really like it. It feels a lot longer than One Deck Dungeon did to me, because you don't just complete a card, take the card off, keep going.
Yeah.
You are strategically trying to earn this progress resource so that you can do the most with it. And that may mean leaving a planet that you actually already completed out on the board because you haven't had the chance to earn enough rocket ships to take it onto your side. It was fun, and I look forward to it. They did not have a lot of the art assets done. They, literally, they had one of the player art assets.
Wow. Yeah.
And there were a couple of the planets, but they were just generic spacey planets, so that's not as... probably, I would imagine, not as involved in getting done. I really did like it. I had mentioned earlier, I hope that they stuck with the all-female theme like they had in One Deck Dungeon. That was a silly thing to say in hindsight. They're just space aliens. It is gender non-obvious worm with many feet and a vest. I don't need a gender for that worm, so that was a comment that I had made before I wanted to follow up on. I'm excited for it. They are bringing this to Kickstarter probably late this year, but if not, then Q1. They were sort of thinking probably in December. So just look for it on Kickstarter then if you were a fan of One Deck Dungeon and you want some more of that.
Real quick, I got a chance to play the latest Fast Forward series game coming from Stronghold Games and designed by Friedman Fries. We talked about the first 3 of them last year, just after Gen Con as well, and surprisingly, there is a 4th one on the way, and we had a chance to grab I had the chance to grab the demo deck. I played with Cassidy and her friend Sean, and the way the Fast Forward deck, or the Fast Forward games work, you have a deck of cards that are in a predetermined order, and you just start drawing off the top card and reading the instructions straight from there. So it's designed to be taught from the deck of cards rather than from a rule book, which, when it works, can be a really fantastic way to learn a game. You know, we've talked about
read a rule book.
Yeah, we've talked about like the demo of Fog of Love, for example, as being something like this, and also we talked about with the Fast Forward games how when it works, it worked really well. So this new one is a number play game, kind of like Fear, and I don't want to go into too much about like the changes and stuff, but basically what you're going to be doing is you have a 3-card hand that you've drawn off this deck, and at the end of a round, you're going to want to have the highest score combined in your hand. And it seems extremely simple, and the very first round or two is, because, you know, you only have a handful of cards in there, but as the game progressed, you added more and more special rules that changed the way the scoring works, and then the cards themselves also had special powers that changed the way the numbers and scoring worked as well. So we got through about 11 rounds of it in an hour, each being, you know, that being a full game all the way up to scoring, which is how these games are designed. They're designed for you to play multiple short games so you can see the evolution over a period of time. And in that hour, I think we got almost through about half the deck. So you can get a good amount of play out of one of these decks. And the great thing is with a Fast Forward deck is that if you want to, there's mechanics in there for how you store it for the next play and then just start rolling again. I liked it a good bit. I like this. I think that this is the kind of game that worked really well for the Fast Forward because it is a number play game that allows you to bring in a whole bunch of cards, and it has mechanics for getting cards out of the deck, so you're adding in more cards each game, and it does continually feel fresh each round of the game. You might have 2 or 3 rounds where the same scoring is in effect, but it's not too long before you get something new and exciting. The other thing I was really happy to see is that this one didn't seem to have any real issues with the clarity of the rules, which is something we had talked about in Fear. We actually had to go and get some, clarification for that, and since we had the kind of a pre-look at that one, a preview at that one, that it was very hard for us to find information because nobody else had been talking about it yet. But this one right now was probably the clearest of the 4 of them for just, immediately grasping, understanding what was going on. So I'm actually really looking to this one, and I feel like this is one that we'll probably get a chance to look at a little bit deeper in the future. Really fills the same niche as Fear, but with a different mechanic for the way you're counting your numbers. And that is Fast Forward Fortune, coming from Stronghold Games this fall. We also had an opportunity to swing by Floodgate Games to check out some of the new stuff that they've got coming. They've got 2 games, Bad Maps and Bosk, and Floodgate is obviously the studio that has brought Sagrada, picked up the 5 to 6 player expansion this year. We had a chance to talk with Ben Harkins at Floodgate, and he took us on a quick run through of both of the games, and I'm really quite excited about both of these.
Yeah, the first one, Bad Maps, is a game where you are competing pirate captains, and you, for some reason, have destroyed all of your maps, so you have only pieces of maps to try and tell your minions where to go to dig up this treasure. Never mind the fact that there's a giant X right in the middle of the island indicating where the treasure is.
Nobody can see that. Nobody can see the X.
So you have 2 kinds of cards. There are facing cards, north, south, east, or west, and movement cards. And these cards on the back of them indicate whether they are facing or movement, but they don't say what they are. And on the front, they tell you which direction you would face on a facing card and what your movement is on a movement card. Everybody is going to be sitting in front of a programming station, but it's just 5 card slots that you're going to program cards into at the beginning of the round. And you have some secret goals, which minion you want to be closest to the treasure at the end of the round, which minion you want to be, first or second, what minion you want to be farthest but off of their starting space. So you are trying to program the minions to achieve your goals, and you're doing this by placing cards into those 5 programming slots. Some of them have to be face up, so everybody knows what the minions are going to do, and some of them are face down, so everybody only knows whether you're playing a facing card or a movement card. So you're still getting some information on the face down cards, just not specific information. some of the players may be working together because maybe we both want the red minion to be close to the treasure because I have the card that says I want the red minion to be first, and you have the card that says you want the red minion to be first or second. But I don't know that because they're secret objectives, so I may be trying to counteract things that you're doing that would have actually helped me. So there's a little bit of a game in figuring out who's on your side with each minion, and there's also this programming game where you're trying to get the minions close to the treasure. You can also send them running off into the sea, and then they rematerialize on their start spaces and continue their program from there, which I think is kind of funny.
I was really excited to get a look at this one because it kind of got billed as like a, social kind of game, but it really is not so much a social game as much as it is a programming and kind of deduction game, because everybody has the same set of action cards and some of them are played face up. You can kind of deduce what cards were left for them to play in the face down slots. And since you're not controlling one specific minion, you're really kind of forced to continually look at the whole picture. It seems like this is going to be a really fun little programming game, and production and art's looking really solid on it. It looks like they are launching this one for Kickstarter in September, I think.
September for hopeful delivery in March.
Yeah. The other one we got a chance to take a look at is Bosk, and this is coming to Kickstarter in, I think, November.
November for hopeful delivery in May.
Yeah, they very much want to hit that fall window. This is a really, really pretty game about growing trees. It's art by Kwancha Moria, and the box cover of this is just absolutely astoundingly beautiful. Danielle, you want to talk about the game?
Sure. You've got a grid in front of you, and the grid is divided up into different sections of terrain. First thing you're going to do is be placing your trees out onto the grid. You're going to place them at the intersection points of the grid squares, and whoever has the highest value after the trees are placed, because each of the trees is numbered 1 to 4, whoever has the highest value in each row is going to get, I believe it's 2 points, and then the second highest value will get 1 point, and you're going to score the columns the same way. So you get a whole bunch of points after you've placed your trees, but then sort of the real tricky area control part of this game starts. The wind is going to be set to be pointing in a certain direction, and you are going to take your little leaf tokens, and you're going to spread out some leaf tokens based on which card from your hand. You start with a hand of cards that is, I believe, 1 to 8, and a squirrel. And you're going to take your card, and you're going to place that many leaves out onto the board. You have to place them in the direction that the wind is blowing from your tree of the number indicated. You start at 1 and then you move up through your trees up until you get to the value 4. And you're going to be placing them sort of adjacent to the previous leaf. So the first leaf has to be placed within the first 3 squares in front of the tree in that direction. And then you can sort of meander the leaves out as long as they're still adjacent to the last leaf you placed. At the end of the game, you're going to receive points for having the area majority of leaves in each of those different terrain regions I talked about at the beginning, but you can cover over your opponent's leaves by paying an extra one of yours when you're placing them out. There is also a squirrel, which, depending on which demo of this you listened to yesterday, either leaps out of the tree gracefully and lands into a pile of leaves, or falls out of the tree and then stops moving. And the squirrel sort of caps off a leaf pile. You can't place any more leaves, and then you have area control on that. But you're going to be spreading the leaves off of your trees, so hopefully you placed your trees not only in a way to have area majority on those rows and columns, but also to be able to give you good leaf spread. Mm-hmm. And at the end, once everybody's placed all their leaves, you'll do the area control bit for points, and whoever has the most points wins, obviously.
Really, the most points?
Yep.
I am really, really excited to see this game come to Kickstarter in the fall. I am hoping that it is as big for Floodgate as Sagrada was. It is going to be, from what I can tell, a game that just has an immediate appeal in terms of the art and the appearance, and it sounds like the gameplay and strategy is clear enough that people are going to be excited to get into it. And just like Sagrada, I feel like a lot of people are going to be drawn into it, and just, I think Floodgate's going to do some really cool things in the next few years. I'll just say that much, I guess.
Cool.
Shane and I got a chance to go over to the HABA booth and take a look at some of the titles that HABA has coming. This is a booth that I have not really been interested in the past, up and beyond the existence of Rhino Hero, because Rhino Hero is fun. But they've really been expanding their, not like adult games line, but line of games for not children, I think is the way I want to say it. And we got a chance to look at 3 of the small box games that they released in this series. One is called Connects, and then there's Karuba the card game, and also King of the Dice. I want to talk about Connects real quick. It's the one that I did not get a copy of yet, but it seems really interesting. And you're basically going to be racing people down this particular token track by placing cards connected to other cards, and every card in your hand will have kind of like a corner cut of another color card on it. So on your turn, you're going to be playing a card connecting to another card so that the colors line up in a certain way.
Like
and
Burger Up?
No, kind of like if you laid 2 squares over each other and they like one of the corners was over the other corner.
Oh, okay.
So it's really dependent on the way that you're laying the cards out on the table as well. What is available to you, because you can't go then physically cover up another card, and kind of chaining these cards together in this weird shape that is very bad to explain on an audio medium. But depending on the card you play, and if there's any modifiers on that particular card, that will move your token down this track, and whoever gets to the end of the track first wins. It's really looked very interesting in just the physical placement of cards. I am assuming you're going to need not a small table.
Right, you're going to need some space.
to make that happen. We also looked at Karuba the card game, which is a card game reimplementation of, obviously, Karuba.
No way.
I know. Which was the kind of the first flip and fill game that kind of got a lot of people's eyes, in that in Karuba, you flip over a card and everybody draws that particular symbol on their board with the goal of, getting the most connection.
I think it's tiles, but yeah.
Is it tiles?
I think so.
Okay. Well, I was completely wrong, and then you're going to flip it and then take a tile and put it on your board. But Karuba the card game is interesting in that each turn of the game, you're going to be selecting 2 of the 16 cards you have out of your hand that represent different paths that you're going to try to connect in order to score points. But you're going to select 2, and each player is going to add those 2 numbers together, and whoever has the lowest sum is going to lose one of their cards, and then everybody puts their cards down in front of them in order to build out. The way this is going to get really mean, obviously, is that as you lose those lower cards, which are the intersections that are very important, because it allows you to obviously connect multiple paths, you're going to be very quickly running out of cards. It's compounded by the fact that all of the cards must remain in the specific orientation. So of the 16 cards in your deck, you might only end up playing, 10-ish of them, 10 to 12. So you have to be really smart about where you are choosing to put your connection cards up so that you can hopefully make connections and get points. It seems like it's going to be super mean and super restrictive and just a real challenge to score points in general. And I think that's going to be the fun in this. It's going to be a very simple, quick playing game. I'm looking forward to getting some more plays of that in as well.
That's the kind of mean game that's okay. Like, a quick mean game is okay. I don't want to spend 3 hours playing a game and then have somebody's mean run it for me.
Mm-hmm. What else we got? Anything else that you would like to talk about on this episode?
I mean, I just not from a games perspective, but just from the day yesterday, I spent a good portion of the day, well, not a good portion, but a couple hours, looking at some panels that were from the One Shot Network. Mm-hmm. If you have a chance, if you're at Gen Con and you have a chance to go to some of their panels, I went to their Dungeon Dome panel, which they actually, instead of running as a dice system, they ran as a Jenga-based RPG with giant Jenga. That was just absolutely a hoot. I had like the side pain laugh. You laugh so much.
Yeah. You
get a little bit of a twinge there. So that was a great time. I really enjoyed that. I also went to their network panel in the evening, which was less humorous and more informative of just about what their shows are going on. And if you are interested at all in that network and the changes that they're making to especially the campaign podcast, it was really good. I think that it's going to be put up on their feed at some point. So you could give that a listen.
Cool.
We also went to our yearly pilgrimage to Kuma's yesterday, which is just the best hamburger. It really is just the best hamburger.
So very, very good. Yeah, Kuma's Corner is something that we look forward to all year. And today we're going to make our traditional stop at Taft's Brewing Company, get a piece of steak. Very excited about that tri-tip. You've been to Taft's, yeah, Shane?
My wife and I went to Taft, but it was just an asinine wait when we were down there, so we just went to Rheingeist instead.
I'm sorry this has happened to you, but it is delicious, and I will eat the food, and I will send you a picture of the food, and you'll be like, oh, that's mean. Maybe I won't do that.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
Maybe don't be mean.
All right.
We also had the, like you had mentioned earlier, we had the now becoming traditional bottle share, which was a fun event. It was great to see everybody bring in the beers that they really like from where they are coming from. Mm-hmm. And it's really a neat event because normally when you have a bottle share, it's with your friends and you just get whatever is local or what they've managed to pick up from their travels. But here, like, you got people from all over, so people were really bringing stuff. We had a beer that was older than some of the people that were there.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting try. It did have some logistical difficulties, but it was a great time, and I'm glad everybody came out. I hope we can keep that going in future years.
Yeah. Final thoughts on Gen Con? How'd y'all feel this year?
Solid year.
Yeah.
It was good.
I'm going to wait till we do the Sunday wrap-up to give you my final thoughts.
Well, my feet hurt, so
You're sitting down.
Alrighty. Well, that is it for this particular segment. We'll do a little quick recap after we get home, eventually. All right.
Say goodbye, Shane.
See ya.
Bye, Shane. All right, and it is very late Sunday, and we are home.
We are.
As is tradition, recording the final bit of Gen Con wrap-up safely home with all the games in the world, or at least some of the games in the world. It feels like all the games in the world, but I think that's true after every one of these giant Gen Cons. Not a huge amount of stuff to talk about today, except for one very significant item. We had a chance to sit down with Gil Hova of Formal Ferret Games and play a preview prototype of his upcoming game High Rise that he is looking to launch on Kickstarter in February.
Yep, he is very much still tweaking it, but from what we got to see, it is a game where you are moving around a one-way track, sort of like something like Tokaido or Glenmore, and you are trying to gain resources and build buildings in different areas of the city to gain different powers and points, and you're trying to build tallest buildings in each of the regions, but you'll also want to place them strategically so that you get good powers when you build them. It was a really enjoyable game. I liked it.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things, and I feel like we're almost building a tradition of sitting down with Gil Hova to play one of his games at Gen Con now. We had a play of Battle Merchants the very first time we went to Gen Con, and then, there's this one here as well. We did
Networks the year before it came out.
Wordsy, all that fun stuff. But yeah, it's so much fun to do a play test with Gil because his mind just is constantly evaluating his game, and it was fun in a way. He was tweaking the point values of things as we were playing just to see how it affected and how it balanced. But I really, really like this game, and I'm so excited to see this one sometime next year. I had played Glenmore once when I was up in Durham just for a random game night, and I love that kind of the rondel action selection track. Just the one-way thing where whoever is furthest back on the path will be the one who takes the next turn. Obviously, you see that in Tokaido as well, but this one, it loops around itself, and you play 3 loops of the board is the timer in the game. And I love getting the choice when I'm at the very back of the pack of do I want to take one step to that first empty space, or do I want to jump way ahead because I need to get past this one particular marker to get the bonus tiles? I also really enjoyed in this one the way that he incentivized building different kinds of buildings. There's 5 blueprints out that are basically different colors of floors, and you have to collect those particular colors of floors as you go around. But the blueprints there dictate what kind of buildings you can build, and each of them, the first person in a round to build that particular blueprint gets a bonus floor. So there were a number of times that, I had enough tiles to build the biggest of the blueprints. I actually went with one that was a little bit lower simply because it had more, it had a bonus floor, or I think even one of them got to the point where it had 2 bonus floors on it.
Yeah, there were a couple, and there was definitely a point in the game where I could have built, because the building blueprints generally have, towards the beginning they have fewer cubes, and towards the end they have more cubes. That's how they start, and cubes are added each round that a particular blueprint is built. So as you build a particular blueprint, it not only becomes more expensive, but if you build it the second time, it doesn't have that bonus floor. So there was definitely a point where I built the 3rd blueprint in order when I could have built like the 5th because it had 2 bonus floors and it was cheaper. It was a better economy for my floor usage. There's also a mechanic where there's a wild color of floor, which is the white floor, the ultra plastic. And if you match in a blueprint the white requirement with an actual white floor, because they're wild and you could use any color to match a white cube, and you can use a white floor to be anything, it's sort of a double wild system. But if you use a wild as a wild, sort of giving up those 2 wild options, you get a bonus floor, which can be really valuable because that can give you the tallest building in a region when maybe you would have been tied otherwise. This game was super friendly with its ties, by the way.
Yeah, that's another thing that was really interesting about it, and I think it really just incentivized more fun. Pretty much every tie, every kind of tie in the game, Gil talked about it as ultra-friendly. So, for example, there's scoring at the end of the round of what the tallest buildings were, and maybe at the very final round of the game, we had one tower that was 15 and one tower that was 11, and then we had like 3 or 4 different 10s. And the 10s, instead of, being in a mean tie, they wouldn't count at all, or in a balanced tie points, they would split the points. In Ultra Friendly, not only did everybody get the same amount of points, but if you had 2 towers of the same height and that one was scoring, you also got that points twice. So it actually encouraged you to build even if you couldn't beat out another tower, just because you could be part of that and continue to get points. That's one thing I really appreciated about the game, is that every decision was rewarded. Every decision had a fun or a positive or a bonus outcome to it. And I think that's something that made it really neat.
Yeah, this one, he said when we were talking about just the Kickstarter in general, this one looks like it's going to be at a little bit of a higher price point than his other games, but you are getting an absolute ton of plastic in the game, because each of these floors is actually, it's about 1 inch by 1 inch and maybe half an inch thick. So you've got these little pieces that you actually stack up, and by the time you finish the game, you do really have a little plastic city on your board there.
Oh, yeah. And it looks like there's going to be maybe almost 200 of those little pieces in the game, 150 to 200 of those.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see what the final state of this is. He was, like you said, definitely even still considering some major changes to the way the rules work, but the basic system is in place, and I think we were both really excited with what we saw.
Yeah, so High Rise from Formal Ferret Games should be hitting Kickstarter hopefully in February. I am sure we will have it in our Kickstarter segment when that comes around.
Definitely.
Danielle, you got any other final thoughts on Gen Con this year?
No, my final sort of things to do in the hall this year were actually just getting some art from an artist, Danielle Corsetto, who I very much enjoyed the art of, and she was there at the Blind Ferret booth, so I picked up some art. And actually, as sort of a cherry on the top of my Gen Con, as I was walking from that booth back out to where I was going to meet you to go to the car, I ran into a friend of mine that I have known definitely since high school, at least probably since middle school, who attends Gen Con every year, but has a completely different set of events that he deals with. I ran into him and his wife, who I've also known for quite a while, as I was walking to leave, and got to catch up with them very quickly. They're still up in New Jersey, so I don't see them very frequently at all. So that was sort of the cap-off moment for me. And then we, as usual, stopped at Taft's on the way home, as we always do.
So very good.
Eat a delicious, delicious tri-tip dinner, and then drove.
Yeah, I felt good about this Gen Con. It was nice. It didn't feel overly crowded at any point. It didn't feel as slam crammed as Gen Con 50 did. And maybe that was just
Certainly.
That things are starting to get wider with them using the Lucas Oil Stadium more, probably. But it felt easier to maneuver for once, which is weird to say about a Gen Con. I
think it's a couple of things. One, they've expanded that vendor hall space itself pretty dramatically since we started attending Gen Con.
Right.
And they moved, it looked like, a lot of the headquarters for demoing games for smaller publishers into that Hall CD area. So you don't need as many demo tables at a booth, and you don't have as many people standing around a booth trying to demo a game. Whereas, they can just go out to the other room. I think you're right. The Lucas Oil Stadium move has taken a lot of that crush off of it. But I think a lot of it is also just, I know at least for me, I spent a lot of my time on the edges of the hall as opposed to right in the center.
Yeah.
Because of the way that the booths are structured, and it makes sense because of where the doors are, a lot of the bigger publishers are right in the center of the hall. And they have lots of games that are just demo. They have lots of stuff that you're going to see anyway, or frankly, a lot of stuff that released in the last month or so. Mm-hmm. So my focus was really on some of the smaller publishers where, A, they're not going to get into every local game store. They're maybe not going to get as much press. And what they're showing you is really new or just not distributed in any way. So I think maybe those edge areas were a little less slam-jammed for me. I don't know. Saturday was still... Or not, so not Saturday.
Thursday.
Friday afternoon was still pretty busy, but you're right. It didn't feel anywhere near as overwhelming as it did last year.
Yeah.
It was a good time. Maybe that had something to do with us having a little bit more of a strategic plan this year too.
Very true. Yeah, I do want to give a real special thanks to. We had a few listeners just kind of come up and say hi. I guess probably easy to find because it's the first time we had our Draft Mechanic t-shirts on, but that totally made my day. So to each and every one of you who happened to come up and say hi, that rocked my world. Thank you so much for doing that. And it's just so cool to see a whole bunch of people like we usually do. I'm not going to name names because I'm going to forget people, but everybody I met, they got a hug and or a handshake. It was great. Or a dab. It was great to see you. So... It's 2 a.m. I would like to go to sleep. How do you feel about that?
I think that's a great idea.
All right, so we're going to wrap this episode up. You can get us on the internet, draftmechanic.net, at draftmechanic, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the usual places. Board Game Geek Guild, it's guild number 2470. If you want to hop in and join our Slack channel, draftmechanic.net/Slack. And by the way, it's all lowercase on the word Slack because for some reason Squarespace does that with URLs. And if you have trouble, just click the word that says Slack on draftmechanic.net. It'll be very easy for you to jump in and talk with us about board games and craft beer.
I do also want to remind you that if you're listening to this the week it comes out, we have our great big board game day on Sunday the 12th, which is this coming Sunday. We are going to have a ton of prizes to give away, many, many more prizes to give away than we did this time last week when we put out our last episode. So we've got some really great prizes. We've got some fun just activities planned. There is probably very likely going to be a monster match tournament.
I won these giant monster match dice. I might as well use them.
That's true. They are going to have a food truck out there. It is a great time. They're a great space, and it's going to be a great event. Well, at least I'm hoping it is.
Yeah.
A very family-friendly space, so if you want to bring your family with you, that is a fine idea, and I think they will be very comfortable there.
Yeah, all the info for that is up on our Facebook page. Just search for Draft Mechanic on Facebook and tap the events tab.
All right.
Cool.
As always, I would like to remind everybody to please game responsibly. And tell them that I'll see them back here in 2 weeks for another round.
Sounds like a plan. All right. Good night, everybody. Draft Mechanic episode 81 is recorded between August 1st and 6th, 2018, without the live studio cat. You can't take him to cons.
Beauty is in your eyes, you are the beholder. You render me stricken. Do not go gently into that gutter line.
Hey out there in podcast land, this is Brian, and I just wanted to invite you to check out my tabletop game review and preview video channel, Cloak and Maple. There, I check out a lot of Kickstarter games, as well as sneak in some fresh reviews of published games. Come and check out all of the bad acting in my attempts to be entertaining in my intros. Stay for a game overview and hear my thoughts of the game at the very end. You can find Cloak and Maple on YouTube at youtube.com/cloakandmaple.
Punchboard Media, where we all bring something to the table.
Pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.